Hey guys, Vinnie Mirchandani. Real pleasure to have Sanjay Poonen, COO of VMware today. Sanjay's had a long, very successful career in the technology field. I'll let him introduce himself, also tell us a little bit about VMware, and then we'll jump into the conversation on acrobatics he's been seeing. Welcome, Sanjay.
Vinny, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and I've known Vinny for many years. From I think my first time meeting him, maybe 10 plus years ago at SAP. I've admired his research, his work, his perspective, his blogs, and certainly many of the thoughtful questions and directions he gave us at SAP. It's good to reconnect. I hope you and your family and everybody listening to this is staying safe and healthy during these times of the COVID crisis.
Sanjay, thank you for asking, and let me ask you, how is the VMware family doing? Because I know you're fairly widely sprung, and I'm sure some of the locations are hotspots. So how is VMware fared?
Yeah, we're doing well. My family of five here. I've got three kids and wife. We're doing well. We're all sheltered in place in Los Altos. Our headquarters is Palo Alto. We're about 4,000 or 5,000 employees here, and then about 33,000 employees across the world. I mean, obviously proportional to the general population, there have been COVID cases at the company, but we haven't lost anybody, to death. So we're grateful for that. Those who have had cases have recovered fairly well. We were watching fairly closely the high density areas like New York. We have a sizable employee base there. The Bay Area has been relatively, sheltered in place very early, and it's been doing well. We're watching very closely the folks who went into the tunnel first. We have a sizable population in China as things kind of heated up there first, and then South Korea and Singapore, and then India, our home country and where I grew up. We have a fairly large, I think it's our second biggest location now after the US. Several thousands of engineers and sales folks, and they went into lockdown. Now the case numbers in India, but lockdown for a country like that is hard for 3 weeks. And the country did pretty well. Our employees did fairly well. So far, so good. We are, really focused on the health and safety of our employees first, and then turning our attention, if we're healthy, to serving our customers.
Well, good to see you smiling. Sanjay, though, I'm on the advisory board of my business school. And I forgot to ask the dean last week. We had a meeting, and I forgot to ask him, Dean, you taught me a lot of things, but not how to survive a crisis this deep and this wide. Sanjay, where do you find the inspiration to lead? I know you're a very family-oriented guy, big on faith. Tell us, where do you find your inspiration?
I think maybe as I was growing up, especially, the heroes of my life, people like my mother were optimists. And, we grew up in a poor country in India. My mom was, her path out of poverty was education. She was the oldest of 9 kids. So, she grew up in Kunor in the areas, and her dad, they weren't very wealthy at all. And their path out of poverty was working hard. So my parents taught me, nothing in life is certain, but you value family, you value faith, you value your friends, and then you work hard. And I've been very blessed, much more than I deserve. I came to this country as an immigrant on a scholarship to Dartmouth College. I'd never been to Hanover, New Hampshire. Landed in Logan Airport, $50 in my pocket, and took that Greyhound bus up to New Hampshire to study computer science at Dartmouth. There's no way I could have, my parents were too poor to afford an education. If I had not gotten a scholarship, I wouldn't have come here, and I would have probably still had a reasonable, very good education in India. But I'm fortunate for that. After college, I came to the Silicon Valley and started my career at Apple. And I look back at the 25, 27 years, and I'm extremely blessed. So when you have that position, there's tremendous amount of a well of optimism that I can lean into. My parents, my dad's 80, my mom's 77, they're still doing well. So that you focus as best as you can, Vinny, on the things that you are blessed with. You start there because that's your glass half full. And then you try to take out of that glass things that could bless others. I mean, I honestly feel to give is better than to receive. And when you take out of your glass to pour into somebody else's cup, you end up a happier person because someone fills your cup. And I've tried to live my life, and actually right now you have more opportunities to do that because there's invariably people in the world that need to be to be helped, whether it's in your company, but most certainly in your community. If you look at the small businesses around us, they're all being ravaged. I mean, small restaurants being affected, hospitals in some cases under tremendous amount of pressure, both physical health and mental health. And just, I think when you look around you, you won't find very far before there's somebody you can help. And when you, I think, if you're healthy, if you're not healthy, you got to take care of yourself and your family. But if you are, when you turn around your attention to help other people, you end up being very happy. And that's been the story of my life.
Sanjay, that is so nice to hear. Thank you. Well, in all the doom and gloom, I'm an optimist like you. I've been looking for all the heroics and acrobatics, and my God, we're seeing so much of that, right? Healthcare heroics, auto companies jumping in to make ventilators, distilleries making hand sanitizers, all the last mile logistics, all the PPP loans that banks have, just thousands of them. So there's a lot of acrobatics that we are seeing. What have you seen? Tell us about, I'm sure your customers, you're seeing some. You're going wow just about every day. So share some of the acrobatics and heroics you've seen.
Vinnie, one of the first things we did, I was at Davos in January, and the virus had already started in China, but we were there with thousands of people at the World Economic Forum, and we didn't, I was there with many of, peers and industry luminaries, presidents of countries, and none of us kind of did think it was going to get bad just a few weeks later. Fast forward to the end of February, we were on a Friday evening preparing for a major kickoff event we were doing on Monday in Las Vegas, where thousands of people, 4,000 or 5,000 people within the US, and then we were going to follow up the following week in Barcelona, and the week after that in Singapore. So we had a rolling tour of our sales kickoff, collectively about 15,000 people. And it was not yet a pandemic. We were aware of the virus, but it was viewed as an early form of something semi-serious. But we were worried that this could become a pandemic, and well before it was even declared one by the World Health Organization or the CDC, we decided to do that event virtually on a Friday evening and turn the entire event Monday and the following weeks into something completely virtual. Now, obviously, VMware, we live on the premise of virtualization. I was very proud of the team to take that entire event and really tell our employees we're concerned about your health and safety. We did this in time zones that were comfortable for the employees so they could watch this, and it didn't matter if we were up at 10 o'clock of the night or midnight, we were going to do it in a way that catered to us. And then I told our employees, and all of our executives, Pat, the CEO, has been doing the same thing, which is, listen, if you are healthy, turn your attention to your customers. Because if there are going to be customers in need at the front lines, and we have technology that they rely on, whether it's their data centers, whether it's their end user computing environments, whether it's security, whether it's networking. And we began to hear a story after story of customers saying, we need a rapid response or a business continuity solution or a work at home solution. And what were they? These were customers in certain industries. The hospitals, number one, we can talk about some of the use cases there. Schools who are going online, public sector, governments who were in need, and then pharmacies, retailers, all of the people who are in some fashion or the other were first responders. And I told our team, our job is to be the digital first responder to the first responders. And what is that digital technology? We were beginning to see a trifecta of solutions that customers were asking us for that we needed to increasingly scale and make available, and often with some creative pricing and so on and so forth to help customers in need. Number one was, in a work at home solution, they needed virtual desktops, end user computing technology that made their experience at home for that virtual desktop. And we are the leader in that area. We're able to provide this digital workplace called Workspace ONE now at scale. And we began to see customers move from, a large bank had like 10,000 or 20,000 virtual desktops rolled out before COVID. Over 2 weeks, they went from 20,000 to 200,000 very quickly, and we're going to help them do that without a hitch. But that same laptop then needs a second solution, which is security. So the traditional antivirus solutions are starting to kind of get dated and aged. We had acquired a company in Carbon Black. That was the second part of the trifecta that was needed. The third, Vinnie, was network acceleration. You and I talking on the phone want to make sure there's no latency over video communication. We had acquired 3 years ago an SD-WAN technology, VeloCloud, that began to also get very popular. And the use cases were fascinating. It's not just home use. We began to see hospitals who were constructing extensions of the hospital in garages or tents in the parking lots. And they needed network acceleration from their core hospital into the garage or the tent where they were doing a makeshift set of extra beds. This was SD-WAN. And we began to hear story after story from the hospitals, from schools, from governments, from pharmacies, of how this trifecta of digital workplace, endpoint security, of Carbon Black, and network acceleration of VeloCloud could be used together. And then our job was to just make sure anytime there was an escalation from a customer, or they needed some flexibility on payment terms and pricing, and maybe we did a lease payment to help them with this, we were just there available. And most often we were getting a lot of gratifying emails. Thank you for helping us. Thank you for helping us. I mean, it was very redeeming. We would then forward those emails to our leadership team so they could spread those positive stories of how they were helping customers. A few times I got escalations. Customers very upset about something. And you're not going to get everybody happy.
Sure.
Those ones are actually ones you want to actually pay more attention to help make sure that you solve their problem for them, that you take care of them. Because I have found when you take care of a customer in need, they will turn around and their rants will become raves for you long term. But at that time of their need, you've got to really pay attention close to them.
The edge application that you're talking about, hospitals and pop-up hospitals and so on, is that going to be a new use case going forward? It seems like if we continue with this work from home, there's going to be a lot more edge opportunities. How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I think the phenomenon of the Javits Center opening up a whole bunch of beds and the garage, and I think that's a good example of where, surge capacity of beds for hospitals, those will happen. I don't see that being a regular event, but the idea of now being able to quickly spin up some kind of surge for disaster recovery, business continuity, is going to be there for forever, because these, some kind of disaster, if it happens, one needs to know how to adapt to it. But the second part of your question, Vinnie, is also extremely apt, which is I think work at home and work 2.0 are going to fundamentally change as we look into the future. I think the notion of employees, you're in Tampa, I'm in Los Altos, California. This technology, I mean, could you imagine having to go through this type of epidemic without digital technology? Is forever changed our ability. And I suspect it could well be when we come out of this epidemic, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, whatever time, even after a vaccine, there's part of our life which may forever change. I told my sales teams, if we were traveling X%, in my job it was about 40-50%. I hope after this epidemic settles down, pandemic settles down, it becomes half or a third of that, or maybe even a quarter of that is even really needed. In the past, I couldn't score a meeting with a C-level executive unless I met them in person. Now there's a lot of willingness to do that. Well, in fact, the C-level person might be better saying, I don't want to meet you in person. I want to make sure I'm safe, you're safe. And they'll take the meeting over video conference, when in the past, we felt we had to go press the flesh in person. That's just for the front office functions. Engineering teams. Twitter already announced that they are going to allow any employee to work for the rest of their career at Twitter at home if they chose to, in any part of the world. That's a bold statement. I don't know if every one of the Silicon Valley tech companies will go to that level, but if every tech company adopted that sort of work 2.0, it will change the way in which people live and work. We may not, there were folks who in the past, required people to work in the office. I think we're going to get a change of people who are saying, listen, I'll maybe come in once a week. Yeah. I wonder, for example, if there's going to be an exodus of people away from high tax places like California to other places because of this, where they say, hey, I could live in another state, whether it's Texas or Florida or Nevada. And we'll have to see. There's going to be some big implications to the way in which people work in the future.
Finally, I was talking to a CEO who has a fairly large millennial employee base. And he was thinking of reopening his office because he said, some of those guys are itching to come back. And I think if you can supervise them, they're going to do a lot better than, they go socially, just be a little more irresponsible. So I think you're right. There's going to be a mix of people who are going to just want to work from home forever. Others are going to want to come back. So, it's I've heard from several that opening back up is turning out to be more complex than shutting things down, which is, partly because every community has conflicting reopen rules and so on. So
I think those are going to be well thought through, need to be well thought through, Vinnie, because, certainly if it's our campus, just like a hospital, we may require, temperature checks or, There could be requirements for proximity notification or what people call contact tracing. We got to think through those. Those are privacy implications. But certainly just the same way that you are asked some of those questions when you go into a hospital, they want to make sure who's coming in and leaving are safe for the rest of the people there. I think that both schools and, I was telling my wife, it's possible that temperature checks and some kind of detection of a cold, cough might become a requirement at school. But then I hope when that kid goes back home, if they have to, they're able to watch that same class online, okay, and not lose. Today in the workplace, if you went back home, now every meeting has a dial-in or a Zoom video link in it, so that it's just, you're not going to miss anything, okay, hopefully, and that's become part and parcel of our practice. It's not the same at schools. Schools are still adjusting to the challenge of, and that hopefully our teaching systems will get better with technology in the classrooms. But I hope if a kid is sent home because they're sick, they shouldn't have to lose out maybe part of the lecture or even a live feed of that through a web stream is available to that kid as they're recovering at home, and they don't feel that they're losing out. That's part of the reason I think kids often get sent home. Now, listen, I have to acknowledge this is tough for single parents, parents who might, for them having a situation where they're keeping the kid at home longer than they need to, puts extra burden. But quite frankly, listen, if your kid's sick, it's probably better for the kid to be at home and recover as opposed to sending sick kids to school. Much of this way in which people think about school life, especially young kids, not colleges. Colleges, of course, you may have a little bit more because you're an adult, but both schools and I think workplaces are going to forever change.
A lot of good thinking is, at least in the workplace, a lot of good thinking is going on into protocols for distancing and thermal cameras and a lot of good work. So yeah, you're right. I mean, businesses tend to be risk averse and they're managing that. Tell me about, so obviously work from home, massive video traffic. Tell me one or two spectacular CIOs you've seen.
It's been very refreshing. We did a security event last week. I've been very close to Zoom. The CEO is a personal friend. I both learn from him and teach him a little bit. We joke, I'm learning speed from him and he's learning scale from me. We're both very good friends, and I did an interview with him on how, obviously security has been at the core of what they've been doing. They've built a platform that's extremely easy to use, accessible, become a name brand. At the level of a Google, the name brand recognition of Zoom and its brand is incredible. Obviously, had to deal with security, but he's done an incredible job. So it was an honor to just talk with him. I felt a little bit like Anderson Cooper interviewing him and talking to him, just like this conversation about what they were learning. That video is available now online. I had the opportunity to interview the CISO of Comcast, of Netflix, and security is a big deal for us now. We're making a big push into that area, and I set myself a personal goal before COVID to this year try and meet 1,000 CISOs. Now, chief security officers typically report into a CIO or sometime directly to the CEO, CFO, or head of legal. And we are starting to build we have $1 billion security business and really focusing on network security, endpoint security, and cloud security. I think that as we do that, the executives at our companies need to kind of have that, like, here's what we're trying to do that's innovative and creative conversation with the chief security officers to help our teams then go behind that. And it's been fascinating. Any of these conversations, I used 2 or 3 of them as an example, to hear how they're adjusting to the post-COVID or potential post-COVID world, how they're thinking about their IT priorities, what's high on their list and what's being dropped on the list. And every one of these conversations, Vinnie, is a learning opportunity. I've learned so much. I would say my productivity right now is significantly higher than before COVID, because there's a lot more willingness on the part of customers to take a video call.
Sure.
They are shorter calls. I may have spent an hour maybe at a customer, but these are usually 25, 30-minute calls. So it requires me to be a lot crisper at both listening and asking the questions and then speaking, maybe just for 5-10 minutes. And, before COVID, I began to think through what would be the best way for all of the 15, 17,000 people in my organization to learn the VMware story. And I recorded myself that's available on YouTube with a 5-minute version of here's what VMware has to do and where we're focused on in the 5 solution areas. I'm finding those 5-minute pitches of storytelling, making it really clear, crisp, and compelling, are very, very important because it teaches me to do it first, and then it certainly educates my team, but it helps me in the narrative in terms of these 25, 30-minute conversations I'm having with customers. And often they're without slides. So you can't, I mean, if you can, you pop up a slide, but very often you're just having a conversation.
Sure.
You have to empathetically get a couple of key points into them. You can't, kind of go on and on and on. So it's a new skill that you develop. In some senses, all of us are becoming like mini TV producers, right? These are quick, short, 20, 30-minute kind of digital media productions, and then we get back to the next one.
I call it the democratization of the TV studio.
Right.
Next time you talk to the CEO of Zoom, he's probably seen this, but Warren Buffett did his annual shareholder meeting virtually. And he said, my long-term partner, Charlie Munger, who's 96, is not here, but he's become a Zoom fanatic. So you should tell him.
I did tell him that, Vinnie. In fact, I posted that on Twitter too, because I'm a big fan of Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett. I watch all of his investor conferences. And the moment it came out, I captured that and sent it to Eric. He has so many stories of this guy, and he's such a humble person. So, of course, all of these are gratifying to have, whether it's, Charlie Munger or, Warren Buffett or Larry Ellison. He's had a whole number of them about it. And I mean, and the good news is I think that hunger and humility has kept them constantly focused on how do they make their platform easy to use and secure.
Sanjay, you're an optimist. What do you see in terms of the economy? Do you see a V recovery, sharp rebound? Do you see a U, kind of a gradual? Do you see a W because we may have flare-ups and different sectors opening up in different paces? Or do you see an L and it's going to be dead for a while? Where do you fall?
Vinny, I'm not a economist or a long-term kind of predictor of the economy, but I read and watch a lot of them. Whether it's on CNBC or the other kind of economic blogs from folks. I think that the GDP declines might have a couple of quarters. John Chambers was saying it could be 3 or 4 quarters. I can say for one thing, last time the entire world went through something like this was World War II, where it was an incredible, recession for a long time and pressure on the world and deaths in the millions overall over that entire period of time. I hope it's not get anywhere close to 1 million deaths through this. But I think that lasted 6 years. So I'm pretty sure this is not going to last 6 years. Will it be 6 months, 12 months? Don't know. And obviously, people do believe that the end of this phase is certainly bounded by the timing of a vaccine. But prior to that, in a gradual opening or a semi-partial opening, I hope the economy starts to recover and the GDP growth, especially for small businesses, because they're the ones who are affected the most. In the technology sector, this is where I actually differ with some of the analysts. Many of the analysts believe that some parts of technology, including software, will be below the GDP. I mean, there's a raging debate I have with some of the prominent industry analysts where they say GDP will be negative and software will be worse than that on average. And I'm like, listen, in the world of digital transformation, software should be helping lead this. And I think software growth should be better than GDP. And this is a good debate. When I talk to some of the industry analysts who have software pegged below GDP growth, it's not because I'm trying to be self-serving. I think that we are seeing a move to the cloud. If you look at the growth rates of Amazon, Azure, Google, some of the other companies, even after COVID, they're continuing their migration of customers in the cloud. There seems to be no end in sight. And I believe that software companies will help drive this recovery. So that's probably the one piece where will the GDP negative be a V or a U, or I don't think it'll be an L. It's either a V or a U. I don't know. But let's just say it's one of those two, V or a U, or some sort of, not a very deep U that's like a bathtub, but it could be a shorter U. I do believe that software growth will be above GDP. So if GDP is negative, whatever, 3.5, software should be above that. Will it be negative, positive? Don't know. And then for those of us who are in this world of helping customers with work at home or helping drive the cloud momentum, we should be even doing better than that. So what I tell our teams is, listen, not because we're trying to ambulance chase, but to the extent that customers need to delay payments, we have financing and leasing schemes, but we should be one of the work at home beneficiaries, VMware. because of that trifecta of what I described: workspace, one carbon black, and one cloud. You have to go and have those conversations with customers, how we can help them, and from that will come revenue. So that's one. Secondly, we benefit from movement to the cloud because of what we're doing with Amazon, Azure, Google, our cloud native efforts. So as customers think about cloud and cloud migration, VMware should be the center of that. Both of those hopefully give us some tailwinds, even through a crisis, to get some aspects of growth. That's how we're thinking about this. How long it lasts, we'll have to see. And you just then go quarter by quarter by quarter. If anybody thinks they can predict the future right now, they're either ignorant or they're lying.
Well, I'm not going to defend the analysts who tell you it's going to be slower than the GDP. I suspect what they're thinking is there's a lot of on-premise stuff that needs to be moved away. That is actually not doing as well during this process, right? So the replacement of that is going to take a little bit of time. And
your point is that on-premise stuff then anchors down the average to be lower because it's doing worse than the GDP. Yeah, that may be fair, Vinnie. Then my response would be, we should do better than that.
People are going to start looking at third-party maintenance in this time. Right?
Yes.
For some of the older applications. I mean, healthcare. My God, some of the applications there are 40, 50 years old. So, which for someone like you, it should open up even more opportunities.
Fair point.
Final thoughts on, what would you tell your peers in terms of leadership, or CIOs in terms of next generation?
I would say, during every crisis represents an opportunity for leadership to shine. Winston Churchill, Charles de Gaulle, Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa. These folks went through enormous, Nelson Mandela, went through enormous crisis, whether it's imprisonment there, and many of them worse than this, okay? And wars, imprisonment, and their leadership, I think, became stronger through that crisis. So I view this, if you're a leader or an aspiring leader, view this as an opportunity to get stronger. It's like someone put a little bit of extra weight in your weight room to help you get stronger. And it's going to be hard to do that when you are feeling discouraged, when you're feeling down perhaps. Because, yes, I'm an optimist, but there are times when I'm going crazy, sitting indoors and trying to keep my kids, young kids, occupied and busy. So, but you have to find ways by which this makes you stronger at the end of it. And those are going to be both personal and professional. And if you do that, I do believe, when I've seen crises that are personal, or like you come out of that with new behavior patterns that make you stronger, and look for those ways by which you can personally recharge to become a stronger leader, and then find ways. Listen, all of this focus on the customer that I described has made me open my eyes to many of the things that I'm learning that customers want that are strengthening our portfolio. There's a tremendous amount of learning through it. The personal things that I'm doing in my own personal life to stay fit or stay closer to my family are going to have long-term consequences. I hope the time I'm spending now with my kids, every evening we try to go for a bike ride. I couldn't do that for the last several years because I was busy, traveling maybe 40, 50%. Those investments we make in our family, or the things which are going to forever be the gold that you put into your bank account, so to speak, in terms of relationship equity. So don't give up. Keep the faith. Keep the focus, all of you. And I do think this too shall pass. At the right point in time, we'll come through it. We will look back. Some of our life may permanently change. Maybe travel goes down quite a bit. Maybe we're doing a lot more of these video type of calls. But at the end of this exercise, I do believe humanity will prevail. And then find ways by which you can also cheer up other people. I'll share this last story. I'm a musician, and a good part of my life is playing music. I play the piano, the jazz piano, and I've just been trying to find ways by which, with a few other musicians at VMware, we can connect to, kind of send the message that art conquers COVID. I did this with 2 or 3 other musicians a few weeks ago. I posted on Twitter a variation of the Secret Superstar Bollywood soundtrack song, and a guitarist, a really wonderful singer, her voice, and me playing the piano, recorded in 3 separate places, shelter in place. We put it out there, and people liked it so much. I've now got 25 musicians who are going to record a song. Stay tuned. In a couple of days or weeks, we will release it. And it's just a way by which 25 random people in different parts of the world, China, Italy, India, Australia, the US, are going to record something, put it on thing, and just share it with the world a little bit of how we're trying to make the world a better place. So,
Sanjay,
whatever your gift is.
I'm going to assign you something.
Okay.
I've been running every few years. I run something called Technology and My Passion. It's a guest column series. About 200 people have over the years contributed. This year, I accelerated it because I knew people would be, needed positive reinforcement. I've had 40 people contribute.
That's awesome.
Why don't you get your ensemble to write this? I'll send you details on it.
Yeah, please do.
I'd love to get your team to write about that passion that you're showing. But Sanjay, thank you so much. This has been very inspirational. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vinnie. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Be well, stay safe, you and your family, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.